Thank you everyone for coming down and for waiting so patiently. So as a start, I think what we want to do is to thank the Providor, our new venue partner, for letting us have this beautiful space. The other people I want to thank are our camera crew. They're so patiently setting up, so that's really nice of them. Thank you so much. Okay, I think so this is Fang and Xuan. They are the founders of Terraformers. I think they want to say a few words before we start. So yeah, go for it.
Hi. Oh, wow.
That's really loud.
My name is Fang. I'm co-founder of Terraformers, a regenerative travel community, together with Xuan. And I guess just before we start, we just want to thank everybody. There's a lot of familiar faces and also a mix of new faces. Thanks for Wild Space for organizing. And thank you, Julian, for coming down, and also our wonderful camera operator, Animal Planet documentary girl. She's also part of our Terraformers community, and in fact, that's also how we met Kelly through Terraformers community as well. So yeah, thank you for supporting our very young impact startup from the very beginning. We're still in our early stages, and definitely we are here today to share more about it. And maybe you can.
Yeah. Sure. So I think for those who are new to us, thanks for coming. We are Wild Space. So this is what we call Wild Conversations. It is a series of informal conversations where we want to invite anyone over food and drinks and just to mingle and to talk about sustainability, to talk about conservation, to talk about nature and how we can be better stewards for our environment. We typically engage a speaker in the field of this nature or sustainability to talk about their topic of specialty. And we would like the audience to also ask questions freely at any point in time. So we want this to be engaging and to be informal and very casual. So while Wild Conversations is free to attend, what we do is generally we will ask the speakers to pick an organization of their choice for a contribution to go towards. And I think they have chosen Impart SG. Impart SG is a community. I think they pioneer youth development, and it's completely volunteer driven, and it is a Singapore-based charity. So what I'll do is I'll pass this around to the different tables, and if you like, you can make a contribution towards them. So I will pass this around. Okay, thank you.
So Impact, maybe just more about Impact. They work with youths at risk, and they're run by a team of really passionate volunteers who try to do things like give tuitions and guidance, counseling for the underprivileged youth in Singapore. So yeah, that's why since we're in the business of community empowerment, community building, we thought that our friends at Impact, they can also be aligned with this as well.
Yeah. I think they are a great organization, and I've looked them up. So I've left their URL on the piece of paper as well, so you can have a look at their website. They do really great work. Okay, so I think before we start, I usually like to start with a quiz for our audience. Aha, Tim, are you ready? Okay, just a show of hands. Who has been traveling since the start of the year? Who has traveled since the start of the year? Raise your hand. Wow, so you see that's a large number of people who have. So we have a great audience that has traveled quite a bit. So I do have a few travel questions. Probably nothing really related to regenerative travel, but okay. Let's start. Which are the top 5 most ethnically diverse countries in the world? Top 5. Just shout out your answers. Sorry, no prizes. Brazil. No.
United States.
United States. No. China. Also no. India. Also no. Wow. Okay. I will give you the first place. Papua New Guinea. Papua. Yeah. We have 4 more. Vietnam? No. Vietnam. Sorry?
Singapore.
Singapore? No, unfortunately no. Okay, I'll give you the others. So the next one is Tanzania, DRC, Congo, Uganda, and Liberia. So actually Africa is the continent with one of the most diverse, like ethnically diverse groups. Yeah. Okay, the other one. This one might be a bit easier. Name the top 3 most visited countries in the world.
South Korea.
Did you say South Korea?
USA.
USA. Yes, that's one of them. You're right. Anyone else?
China.
China? Not China. Not Japan.
France.
Yeah, France. In fact, France has come in top many, many, many times. Yeah, surprise, surprise. And the other one?
Britain.
Britain. No, Spain. Actually, Spain. France, Spain, and the United States. Top 3 most visited countries in the world. Okay, this one is very interesting. Somewhat related to our topic today. Okay, name the top 3 countries with the highest ecological footprint in the world. So what is ecological footprint, right? You know, so actually ecological footprint is a matrix that is used to determine the impact humans have on the environment in any given place or country, which means that it measures the amount of natural resources that the people use in that area. Yeah, so top 3, make a guess. Highest 3, yeah.
America.
No,
China?
not China. Yeah. Highest ecological footprint, Philippines, no. Not the Philippines. Okay, one more guess.
So it's not a good thing, right? The highest.
Yeah, it's not a good thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Australia.
No. So the top 3, Qatar,
Makes sense.
second one, Luxembourg.
Huh.
Huh. Yeah. And the last one, UAE. Yeah, the Middle East. So the Middle East, yeah. Okay, so today, okay, that's all for my teasers. Sorry, no more.
That was fun.
Yeah, hope you learned something. Yeah, well, okay, so today we have Fang and Xuan. They are the founders, and they're 2 very young women, and they are the founders of Terraformers. So Terraformers is founded on the vision of creating a world strengthened by cultural and environmental integrity and powered by global, rural, and urban relationships. And yeah, so they strive to empower local communities by promoting regenerative travel offered by indigenous communities, right? Yeah, to make tourism a force for good. So I think I'm gonna stop talking here and I'll let them tell you a little bit more about, I guess, what Terraformers is. Yeah, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you guys met and how Terraformers was founded. Yeah.
Right, so I'll pass the mic to Xuan first because she has a really interesting story. Yeah, so take it away. Is it
Yeah.
long enough?
Yeah, I think it is. I'm gonna pull that thing over.
Okay, yeah, so a little more about myself. I used to travel a lot, and of course, like I started off being a mass tourist, and I went backpacking after I graduated from uni. So that was in 2019, and what really hit me was when I went to Mongolia for the second time. I was looking for this ice cream. So it's like just a very normal chocolate coated vanilla ice cream. And we couldn't find it anywhere in Ulaanbaatar city center. So it was very appalling. I was like, why is that? Like, it's a Mongolian ice cream, so it made no sense that the city center didn't have this ice cream. So I just asked my friend, like, what's happening? And she replied, maybe we had a very bad winter And so there wasn't enough snow, so we don't have enough milk now in summer, so that's why you had no ice cream. So that was when I actually had this existential crisis. I was like, why is it so natural for her to connect a climate condition to like the lack of an ice cream, right? For me, it was like everything comes from the supermarket at that time. Yeah, so that was when I started reflecting a lot about the impacts of climate change and how it is actually affecting people. So when I came back, I started working at an impact startup community called Audacity. So I was doing ecosystem building in climate technology, and there was a lot of like high tech climate stuff going on when we looked at early stage startup founders. But I also like started to deepen my understanding in sustainability, and I started to realize like these social issues that are also associated with this term sustainability that is often maybe overlooked. Yeah, because a lot of the conversation has been focused on net zero, carbon negative, and yeah. So long story short, I decided to work on regenerative tourism when I came across this term because, like, personally, I still like to travel a lot, and I know the carbon emissions associated with travel is bad. But I do believe that travel can be a very strong force for good. I mean, for one, I started to care about the climate crisis a lot more because I traveled to somewhere outside my little bubble. So I do believe that travel can be a very strong force for good. And yeah, so when I read about regenerative tourism, I read about how it could create like thriving communities. I wanted to contribute a lot more to this scene, and that's where I started working on Terraformers. Yeah, then maybe Fang will share how we met.
Yeah, so that's like her part of the story, but we haven't met each other yet at this time. So for me, under my undergraduate days, my experience were a lot focused on startups and environment. So I graduated from NUS Bachelor of Environmental Studies, same as Eva. So that's how we met. And my other program that I was always in is NUS Overseas College. So that's where like I pursue my other passion in startup, but I've always just been in the startup ecosystem and trying to get as close as possible to like sustainable innovation. And for my final year, I did like some gene editing for agri-tech. And eventually, after I graduated, I also went backpacking. But I was backpacking around my hometown in Malaysia. Then I was visiting like my uncle, who is in northern Malaysia, and it was such a beautiful landscape. And I was really shocked that how come there was no other tourists? Like I'm just here alone, like enjoying this very Insta-worthy destination that like nobody is enjoying. I felt like so weird, right? So I asked my uncle like, why is there no tourists at all? And he was like, actually, yeah, it's a hidden gem, but the government is looking to develop it to maybe become a tourist town. And when I heard it, my heart sank. Yeah,
Right.
my heart sank because I mean I've seen like tourist towns that are kind of like mismanaged or like crowd controls, and when I look back at the landscape that I'm in, I just felt like I really didn't want that to be taken away. So when I came back to Singapore, I attended at an Audacity event with my brother, who seldom goes to networking events, and he was like, a little voice in my head told me that I should bring you to this event. Like I didn't make this up, like really, really. Yeah, he's a more private person, and he said this to me, so I just went with him, and then I met Xuan. And one thing led to another. We started talking and realized that like our like just fundamentally we connect a lot, and I decided to join the Regenerative Tourism Project, yeah, which is now called Terraformers.
Right. So how did the name Terraformers come about? Because I guess that's a name that not many of us are familiar with. I guess if we're not in tune with like NFTs. I guess.
So we're not related to Terra Luna, but Shane will tell you.
So Terra basically means like earth or land, and farmers is like farming land. So that's how we came up with the name. But there's actually no real story behind it. It just came to our minds, and we're like, okay, it's quite cool, and yeah, so we decided to keep it.
Okay. Right. So actually, my next question is, what do you term or how do you coin the term regenerative travel? Because I think there's so many different types of travel, ways of traveling out there, and like people are talking about sustainable travel or cutting down your carbon footprint. So is that what regenerative travel means? And maybe I guess that's what our audience also kind of want to know. Mm-hmm.
For us, like when we look at regenerative tourism or sustainable tourism or ecotourism, I think it's more about the goals of whatever you want to tell your project. So the goal of regenerative tourism is to improve the local social and environmental well-being, whereas maybe sustainable tourism, some of it might be reducing carbon emissions. So for us, we categorize it by the objective of what the project aims to do. Yeah, and when we work on regenerative tourism, what we believe is that um, for all our travel impacts, there's very limited things that we can actually do as a consumer. So for one, we can't really reduce our carbon emissions related to flying, except for buying carbon offsets, which is like a different story. Yeah. But and even like what impacts we have on the local communities is very restricted by the kind of development models that are being adopted on site. So who are the organizations that are actually benefiting, or who are the stakeholders that are benefiting from this tourism development? Yeah, so when we curate our experiences on our platform, we basically look at three different aspects. So the first is conservation, where there's active environmental and cultural stewardship built into the tourism activities. And the second is resilience. So we look at it also from an economic standpoint, like does it provide overall increased resiliency for the communities? So one of the problems with tourism is that it causes a entire reliance on tourism, because for a lot of these communities, tourism is a much more lucrative income, and compared to like doing the very manual labor of like agriculture and stuff like that, they tend to like just consolidate all their income into tourism, which is actually not very resilient from a social perspective. And the last is the equity or inclusivity of this model. So are there any spillover benefits that actually benefit people outside the tourism supply chain, but within the community itself? Because like nature or culture, they are actually public goods. So they shouldn't be privatized to just benefit the main stakeholder of tourism. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe like that's the on a broader theoretical sense, but what does it translate actually for us travelers when we embark on like a regenerative travel experience? So imagine you go to this like village and like a lot of a really warm, welcoming team of indigenous locals come to you and like, hey, welcome. And all of them are kind of like just working part-time to let you experience their daily life, their daily activities, and it's based on like who's free that day. It's based on like who has the bandwidth. So nobody is actually working full time to serve one person, one tourist, and because of this like distributed workload in a way, and it's part time, that gives them like a supplementary income from tourism, from their tourism revenue, instead of it becoming their main source of income, which is what we're trying to avoid. Yeah. So as a traveler, you get to go to everything. Like maybe if they go fishing, you can go with them. If they have a wedding on that day, you can go as a plus one. They really treat you like a family. So yeah, that's how we quantify as like a non-disruptive economic resilience kind of travel experience.
I see. That's actually very interesting to be able to, I guess, participate in. Oh, I think the mic is a bit close. Sorry. Yeah.
Echo.
I guess it's interesting to participate in a local villages like regular activity. It's not something that you as a sorry, I don't know, it keeps having some feedback. But anyway, yeah. So that having said, I'm going to open it up to the floor to see if anyone has any questions in the meantime before I ask on. So if no one else has, I'm going to ask actually. So, in terms of regenerative tourism, and you're looking at entering a village or a community that is, I guess, very closed off or not very open to mass tourism, how can we I guess in a way, protect them from um, the evils of mass tourism, right? Because they are looking to better their lives naturally, and obviously tourism is a good way to do that. It is a great source of income. How can we make sure that they are protected in that way?
Yeah, so I think one thing to like add on here is that actually regenerative tourism is not very new. So it's kind of new to all of us, but because it's not mainstream, but it actually happens in a lot of communities, even in urban settings, where individuals are looking at designing tourism to benefit whatever communities they want to serve. So for us, what we do is to really try and amplify their reach. And also, when we work with the villagers right now in Vietnam who are relatively newer to tourism, then we do like the education work. So one thing that we try to educate them, it's like the long term, like being in this game for the long term instead of a short term kind of benefits, which is quite apparent, especially like because we are focusing on Vietnam. So there have been a lot of villages that have benefited from mass tourism, but like it only lasts for like 3 or 4 years. So we try to do that education for the local people, for them to understand that that is not what they want, because like there's going to be a lot of investments to scale up for the mass tourists, and after 3 years, all of that just goes to waste. Yeah, and the other thing that we do is to work with them on regulations to kind of like set caps or limits and help them understand like what they what are the actual time allocations that they want to put into tourism, how much resources they want to put in, what is the best way to kind of balance. And these regulations will be like abided by when the communities try to develop.
So Shane actually works on the ground, so most of the time, it's a rare sight for you to catch Shane in Singapore because she's actually now based in Hanoi. So that, yeah, so that Terraformers we can work more closely with our indigenous partners on the ground, and yeah, I think she is basically like Vietnamese at this point.
Do you speak Vietnamese?
Very broken Vietnamese.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think Vietnamese is quite hard, like the 6 different intonations. Yeah, so I think working with the communities, to be honest, I think like my best Vietnamese is like the drinking language.
Right. Okay. So, just wondering why Vietnam then, and because you said you started off in Mongolia, and Mongolia was how this thing kind of found itself. So why Vietnam? Yeah.
A couple of reasons. I mean, like one on the very practical side, Vietnam is a rising economy, and I don't know if you guys follow startup news. Basically, Vietnam is like the highlight of Southeast Asia at the moment. It's that rising tiger. So that's one of the reasons. The other is that Vietnam actually has very significant investments into community-based tourism. So there's a general top-down understanding whereby they know that what can differentiate themselves is the diversity in their cultures and their ethnic groups, and they want to actually bring that out through this term called community-based tourism. So it makes it a lot easier for us to work with the communities there because there's already that understanding from the local governments. Yeah, and I guess like northern Vietnam has really great landscapes. It's near to Singapore, so also much more accessible for our target groups of audience. Yeah.
So like just now the quiz by Daphne, right, about ethnic diversity. So well, Vietnam didn't make the cut, but actually they have like 54 and 53 ethnic minorities basically. Yeah, so they have a really diverse and rich culture, and well, I guess like we believe that you don't really have to go really far for a transformative and regenerative experience. And yeah, we also work closely with like the local NGOs and social enterprises that already have the knowledge and the know-how locally.
So are these NGOs and these social enterprises the ones that you work with, or do you work directly with the communities? Or because if you don't speak Vietnamese and these communities are based in the village, then you as either a traveler, if you're going there yourself, how are you going to communicate and what's going to happen? Yeah.
I think usually for the more serious stuff, so like the educational portion, we will involve the non-profit and the social enterprise because we don't want things to be lost in translation. But also like I think it's maybe a Vietnamese culture or an Asian culture. It's a lot about like networks and relationships. So it's still very important to just be there and like know the local community well, so that when they know like, oh, this traveler is from like Terraformers, they will know like, okay, I need to do this. Yeah, I need to offer like local activities, yeah, and abide by like this regenerative tourism development model. Yeah.
Language-wise, so it really depends village to village. So there are we've seen like villages that have kind of they have already had some education done on the ground. I think there was a homestay owner who is very adept at using Google Translate, and also like where it's always an experience, right? When you travel, there's that cultural exchange, that language exchange, and personally, I find it, even though I'm very very bad at Vietnamese, I think it has been like a really fun experience just trying to learn. Yeah, so our social enterprises also definitely help us a lot. Yeah.
I think, okay, yes. Go for it. No, I was just gonna say, like, I feel like as part of travel, always that's something that it's important for. I guess not just like it's important for everyone to kind of immerse yourself in the culture and really through cultural experiences. And it's like the nuance in the language, and it's not something that can be replaced quite easily through, I guess, translation or whatsoever. Yeah. So yeah. So that was what I was gonna say. Yeah, but go for it.
So I have one main question and a follow-up question. How are you all different from Vietnamese-based, basically local run tour operators? Then the follow-up question is your reach limited? Because I mean you are a Singaporean-based company.
Okay. So I guess the question, I have to repeat it so that the mic picks it up, is that how are you different, right, to the local based and is your reach like maybe smaller compared to the rest? Yeah.
So local-based tour operators
Mhm.
who also do community-based tourism.
Yeah.
Yeah, so with regards to the first question, I think a lot where we aim to be different. So of course we're like an early stage startup now, so our offerings are limited, but we actually hope to become the platform whereby travelers can count on if you want to look for regenerative tourism destinations. So you can use ours to save all your research headaches and trust this platform with like the curation of the tourism models that have been adopted by these communities. So how we're different is that usually like local tour agencies or local tour operators, they focus in only one village or yeah. So there isn't like that platform aspect. And with regards to reach now, definitely because like we're super early stage, so we're like just 6 months into incorporation. So yes, our reach is still limited, but we hope to actually grow that. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we do that by a mix of secondary research and also definitely being on the ground to experience it ourselves firsthand and to see whether the NGOs, the enterprises, or the villages, do they fit like our three regenerative principles. So before we can onboard them onto our platform and for our travelers to trust that this sourcing has been done correctly, and yeah, that's what we're trying to build for now.
Yeah, I think what I want to ask as a follow up is like maybe you can describe how you do the sourcing, or in terms of what do you use as a benchmark for when you say experience this yourself. How can we know and trust that this benchmark is accurate, is correct? Yeah.
So I mean, well, secondary research. Let's not overcomplicate it. Is like we all use
Yeah.
Google, and besides, we definitely screen for the kind of terms and principles that and ethos on the website. And I'm sure like most conscious consumers like yourselves, we all do that. And when we're on the ground, we try to see if they hit the same ethos that has been publicized on their website. And I guess the main aspect is really to see if the locals are benefiting from this regenerative tourism ventures that they claim to be doing, and also if things like how they're employed and fairly paid, and if there's like what Xuan has mentioned earlier, that the benefits actually flow out into the community, and there is a community shared community benefit.
Yeah, so what we do for our community members or travelers at the moment is to really highlight what are the evidence that we have seen that supports the principles. For example, like we'll explain a little bit more into the model that is deployed. So like what happens when currently there's 2 travelers versus 10 travelers, what will the villagers do? Like for example, do they involve other villagers in the scaling up of the offering itself and stuff like that? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks very much. I think that was quite insightful as in I think when we I think individually when we travel ourselves as well, I think that's something that I do as well. I try to look out for something that is yeah, I guess not mass tourism, because there are a lot of middlemen through the system, and usually working directly is always challenging because you always end up having either language issues, and I think secondly, you want to make sure that the money does go back and they know how to use the money. I think a lot of the problems that I see most times are that these people, because sometimes the money that we have is so large compared to their currency, and the sudden receiving of a large sum of money might be difficult for some of them, and they don't know how to handle it. So actually my next question is really, how do you ensure that they know how to use this money wisely in terms of financial management, because we don't want it to in the end cause a secondary problem, right? Yeah, I don't know, how do you kind of look at that?
That's one of the reasons why we will choose to work with non NGOs or social enterprises, or even sometimes the local tour operators that are able to support with the financial management. But what's more important is that when we start working with them, we would actually set out like certain regulations that would cap the growth. Yeah, so it doesn't become like a sudden boom in income that becomes like too tempting or too causes a lot more problems. Yeah.
I guess also laying the foundation in these villages that has basic tourism infrastructure and making sure that everything aligns. So we've definitely seen I guess negative examples. Yeah, so those are the kind of reminders that for us to keep to our core principles and to work with these villages based on these core principles.
Yeah. Okay, that's good to know. Yeah. Any questions from the floor so far? No? Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah. Like, what is, maybe more on the business models, like, you don't have to say too much, but how do you guys intend to make money and sustain yourself?
Yeah. I think so. His question is, how do they make money? Short.
Perfect question.
Yeah, okay, so what we try to do is like we charge a membership fee. So under this membership access, so basically you get our content, you save yourself the research if you do want to pick like better travel destinations. So that's the core business model, but of course like that scales much slower. So what we are looking at is like secondary business models in the midterm, where we actually work with schools to do like learning journeys on regenerative tourism or on entrepreneurship and sustainability. So like exposing student entrepreneurs to like bigger issues in the countryside, or like different perspectives that they cannot actually see in Singapore. Yeah.
Thanks. What do you think is one of the worst things that you've ever seen on maybe one of your travels? I guess more of a personal question than a regenerative travel.
So during one of our recce's, So we went to this village that was really, really hard to get to, but then they are actually very popular amongst like the local Vietnamese. And they are community-based tourism. On if you look at their Facebook, their socials, they brand themselves as community-based tourism. But when we actually spend that time and experience there, we realized that they don't actually align with what we quantify as regenerative tourism. There is already a lot of like red flags of mass tourism, I would say. There is overcrowding. We can see very clearly that they cater to like huge groups, and this kind of huge groups, they do put a pressure on the local culture. So it's a very interesting village that does not drink nor smoke or like things like that. Very different from most Vietnamese village. But because of this pressure from tourism being their most significant income, they actually pander to the tourist request, and it is very sad because like we see like this mother of two. They don't drink. They don't like to drink. They don't like the rowdiness of that whole tourism scene. But when we went into the kitchen, you can see like rows and rows of like just bootleg wine fermenting there. And she explained to us that those are for the tourists, and they have faced a lot of questions of like why don't you serve like alcohol, like we want alcohol, like we want to party, that kind of thing. So those are kind of the things that really remind us to like I guess as a negative example, and to choose wisely who we work with, and that's why the recce on the ground kind of understanding is very important.
Okay. Yeah, I guess, that is quite scary. I mean, having to like carry a 2-year-old and then having to serve alcohol with carrying a 2-year-old, that's not very nice. Yeah. Maybe you can share with us a little bit about the regenerative travels that you guys do, like the activities that you have, what makes it different, and what makes it a regenerative travel experience.
So we look at regenerative tourism from a broad systemic level. So everything that we offer on the platform, the activities itself are supposed to be regenerative as well. And honestly, as a traveler, I would say you can just go there and have fun. Like that is what we are trying to do, right? To kind of alleviate the burden of the conscious consumer. Of course, like we've been living in this like climate anxiety and trying to do our best to fulfill so many responsibilities. Every tourism dollar, every dollar that we spend, we try to go like bring it to a sustainable cost. So we completely understand that, and we are designing a product for ourselves who have faced like the kind of dilemma over the years of traveling. So when you travel, maybe we can share some like stories of our fellow travelers who have embarked on the trips to the villages. So there is this bamboo forest, and recently a social entrepreneur, can I say his name? He's an engineer by training, and he came onto this trip and went to hike at this bamboo forest. So he got to see like how he was very shocked when he saw that they don't use cable ties to like bring up like this bundles of firewood and bamboo. And he was like, wait, how are you gonna carry this back? Like they have already hiked a really long way from their homestay. And the locals, they just began to take those bamboo fires and like just tie it up. And it was really sturdy, and he was really impressed because cable ties in I guess in an engineer's world is very irreplaceable. REP, right? So that's the kind of like hyper localized contextual knowledge that only a very authentic and immersive experience when you go onto a hyper localized life, I guess, to experience that kind of thing. This is what we try to see. And if you guys are interested, our travelers have been taking over our Instagram and sharing their highlights on our stories also. So we've arranged that on our highlight reel as well.
Yeah. So I think actually I saw that reel and I was very impressed. and everyone should kind of go onto their social media, and when they have a takeover, it's quite interesting because they take you traveling through their lens, and it's quite interesting because you do see things that are very authentic and different. And I feel that sometimes when you go and experience, and it's true, right? Being in, I think one nice part about this regenerative travel is really connecting with nature as well, and learning how you can be present. And actually, you'll be surprised how nature can kind of like teach you a lot of things. For example, the design of certain things have been obviously designed after nature, and I'm sure the cable tie was also fashioned after what came out of the bamboo forest.
Right, indigenous knowledge.
Yeah. Do you guys do any other activities besides like a hike? Do people always go on a hike? So for example, if I'm like not a hiker, then what do I do?
That's fine.
Can I still go on this travel? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead.
So actually that was like not meant to be a hike. It was because he was an engineer, and then like the homestay, they were actually fixing their kitchen. So he was very interested in how they gather materials and how they are gonna like fix their kitchen, and he joined them. And then it turned out to be a hike, which he wasn't expecting because he actually left the homestay on motorbike or something. Yeah. Yeah, so definitely there's like a range of activities. I think like people have tried like catching fish or like catching frogs, so that's a bit like less physically intensive. What else?
Do they have to hunt for their own food?
No, no, no. You can if you want to. Yeah, like so actually when Fang and I went to one of the villages together in December, he asked us to forage some vegetable. And like, because it's vegetables, we naturally thought like the useful part was the leaves, right? So we started plucking, and then we tore off the stems, and like we just threw away all the stems. And then when we went back to him, he was like, "Oh my god, all of these are not edible. We need the stems." So yeah, so I think it's better to forage with more supervision, yeah, and leave the cooking to them. Yeah. But I guess like if you're into cooking, like Fang, she started cooking for us and stuff like that. So it usually comes quite serendipitously, like the local activities that you can participate in. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you just kind of like so would you say you book a travel experience and you show up, and so you have no itinerary, right? It's just as you go. Yeah.
We kind of like, so there are actually two kinds of activities. One would be the more nature-based activities where there are treks, where through these treks, like the local villagers will show you how they use the forest, what kind of herbs they use, and the other is the local activities. So you can have a rough itinerary in your head, like okay, maybe I'm spending 4 days and I want to do trekking for 2 days, and I want to leave like the other two for local activities. Yeah, and they will be able to like advise you what kind of activities are going on in the village. Yeah.
So does so for example, if like I'm more into comfortable travel and I don't want to do any outdoorsy activities, does this mean that regenerative travel is always, I guess, uncomfortable? I don't know. I mean, that's just something that would cross like, oh, I'm trying to relax from work, so I want to travel. But if I want to travel, I don't want to travel uncomfortably. Some people might think that. So is that what? I guess is there a difference, and can we make it comfortable? Yeah.
So actually, regenerative tourism can happen in urban settings as well. So we do know of communities in Japan and also like even London. But for us, because we work quite closely with indigenous rural communities, so I guess it might not be comfortable in like the definition of a five-star hotel kind of thing. But like what you actually get is very, very clean organic food, very nice sleeping conditions, very clean fresh air, and I think like living in a city, that's a luxury in itself. Yeah, so that's one. But also I think like regarding the activities, it's okay to like not go trekking and just join the less intensive activity, or just stay at home and like help out with some stuff at home as well.
Yeah, I think what we also observe is that there is an increasing preference for individualistic travel or like flexibility in their travel. So the whole reason we offer things like pre-trip itinerary support or like for our members is that so that some of them they like let's say they are just passing through Vietnam from like Thailand to Philippines doing like a Southeast Asian trip, we can incorporate that into their itinerary so that you as a traveler you have total say of like how you want your trip to be like, and you just want to try out like a Terraformers regenerative experience as part of your itinerary, and that's totally fine.
So it can be part of.
Yeah, for
like
sure. Yeah. So that's how we've seen the backpacker, the travelers that have engaged us to kind of design
plan your trip.
and plan and advise. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it difficult to get to these places? For example, does it take a very long time? I'm assuming like these places, I envision in my head rather, that these places are very far flung and very far removed from civilization. So is it difficult to get to, and maybe like how long does it take to get to these villages? Is it by car or fly or yeah?
So actually, one of the good things about northern Vietnam is that transportation is very developed compared to in other parts of Vietnam. So like they have more highways because Sapa is there, and in general, like northern Vietnam is more developed for tourism or community-based tourism. So it's not that difficult to get to these villages. And in fact, like one of our offerings is super near the city, which we were quite surprised to find because usually like near the city there's a lot of city influence, but this specific one managed to like keep their culture. So it really depends, like if you're a backpacker you can go by sleeper bus. Also like the Vietnamese buses are super comfortable. Like yeah, it's like basically a sleeper bus where you can just lie down and go. Yeah, and it's usually like 6 hours. Yeah. 4 to 6 hours depending on where you choose.
How did you establish contact with these communities, and how do you get them to be willing to provide these travel experiences for people?
Okay, so actually like it's another serendipity. Okay. The question was how did we establish contact with these communities and how did we get them to work with us, right? Yeah. Okay, so I think the whole Vietnam thing also started quite serendipitously. Like last year when I was researching into, was it last year? Yeah, last year when I was researching into regenerative tourism, then I went to this place called Pulong, and then I met like national TV videographer. So basically he films like all these community-based tourism activities, and then he brought us on like a local like catching snail and collecting honeys kind of trip. So Pulong is actually a rising destination in northern Vietnam. And what really hit me back then was like the juxtaposition of the mass tourism side, where like they have all the resorts and stuff like that, and the very local activities. So that's where we kind of like developed the story furthermore. So we had like a bus from Hanoi to Pulong, but the entire time like we were there for the same duration. So we took the same bus there and the same bus back, but we saw none of the other travelers in the same area, right? Because everyone was on like a fixed itinerary to go to the top highlights kind of thing. So that really like kind of consolidated like the potential that we saw. And when I came back, I just like shared this story with my friend who used to work with a northern Vietnam NGO. Yeah, so from there like things just started connecting the dots. Yeah, and then we got to know this non-profit organization, which is part of like a very large alliance that serves indigenous communities in Vietnam and Laos. Yeah.
Are you intending to expand into Laos anytime soon? I guess
Maybe.
maybe. Okay. Yeah. How many destinations you offer?
Currently, we have 2 confirmed villages that we work very closely with, and we're trying to slowly scale that in the region. And there's also an upcoming location that we're going to release very, very soon. So keep your eyes peeled on our Instagram. And in fact, it's actually like a giveaway that's going on right now, if you can guess where it is. Yeah.
This is all in Vietnam.
The 2 villages, yes.
So country-wise, you're only focused on Vietnam right now.
For now, yeah. And the upcoming location, upcoming country.
Southeast Asia.
Central Asia. Yeah.
So, do you only offer places in Central Asia because of environmental reasons, or is because of it just so happened to be that way? And do you offer anything in Singapore? Just wondering.
Yeah, we get the Singapore question a lot, but like what Xuan said, so regenerative as a principle, if we can apply it in an urban context, we definitely are happy to. But because as a startup, we have to focus and on sharpening our niche and perfecting that. So what we are strong in right now is, I guess, like indigenous partnerships and like the kind of rural network that we have access to. Um, why did we start here? Because why not? Southeast Asia is honestly beautiful, and there's like so much growing attention in the travel scene here, and we don't have to like fly really really far away to learn and to have a good time, honestly. Yeah. And also like long flights very tiring, so
True. Fair enough. Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yes, just want to know like what the demographics are for like supplier base, and like have there been any like interesting trends that you want suppliers with?
So the question is, have you noticed any what are the demographics of this of I guess your travel, and are there any trends that you have noticed?
Sure about all this. Okay, so I think in terms of demographics, it would be the uni students to like young working adults. So about like 20 to 35. Yeah, but I think for Vietnam specifically, it's more appealing to uni students. But in terms of like our Telegram following and Insta, it's the young working adults. I guess they're just looking for ways to make their travel more exciting and better. Yeah, but actually, like one of our backpackers did bring her father along on a trip. So that answers your question. Like basically, the father opted out of all the treks and stuff, but still had a very good experience. Just eating with the local community and getting to know them better.
so that's demographic in the age wise. So I would say like in general we have a lot of interest from the eco-conscious or climate-curious people, and just in general people trying to find an alternative form of travel. Travelers who want to see the kind of see and live the kind of travel experience that is not curated for them, not performative. Yeah, so there is a lot of increasing trends for authenticity and demand for this kind of alternative travel, which is what we are really happy to offer.
So would you say that that is really now the trend, that people are looking for alternative travel opportunities and something that is unique to them? And is that what Terraformers can offer, I guess? Yeah. Okay, sorry, yes.
Okay, so one trend I notice about people who are in this sphere is an echo chamber. Like we're all like you say we see familiar faces, right? So in the future, maybe when Terraformers scale up, when you can attract the people who are not so eco-conscious, but then they kind of also like chase the luxurious hotel, 5-star hotel kind of lifestyle. How are you going to do tourist education?
Yeah. So I think the question is really, how are you going to educate the tourists who are not ecologically conscious, but they are also chasing that kind of unique experience, and how would you try and cater to them and educate them? Yeah.
I think like firstly to address that, it comes with a lot of education, so like talks like this and stuff like that. But then with regards to like tourists coming to us, usually it won't be the demographics that like are looking for 5-star hotels. Yeah, so they know that it's kind of a rural setting and they are open to like an off the beaten path adventures. So I think off the beaten path is generally broader than people who are conscious about sustainability, and this off the beaten path branding is what we hope to actually attract more people to make their travels better. yeah, and in general, I think we will continue to serve like the younger population that is more interested in a better, in a more exciting kind of adventure.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, out to reach beyond the echo chamber, I guess a very good opportunity is, I mean, look at TikTok and Gen Z, right? So the authenticity that all the brands are trying to hop on, the kind of the fake or real interns that comments on like TikToks if you have seen. So there is that kind of inclination and demand from the younger generation that is really good to as a gateway for an alternative eco-conscious way of life. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think your point is really valid because yes, I think that the people who care already care, and what we're trying to do is really trying to reach out to those that don't, right? Or rather try to educate them in a more palatable way if possible. That's why I think I asked about the discomfort of travel, because I can travel uncomfortably, but not everyone's gonna be in the same on the same note as me, right? Yeah, so that's something that I think I guess when we try and reach out to our friends as well, we know certain demographics may prefer this, and can we give them that? Yeah, choose that alternative for them. Yeah, I've got a question in terms of as a startup, because you guys are young and you are equally young as we are, in fact, and in terms of the age of our organizations, what are the challenges that you have faced so far in this space? Yeah.
So like my standard answer to this is that everything is challenging. And I get, but like nothing is really that bad because I guess we just take things step by step, solve one problem at a time. So like, I mean, funding, hiring, retaining talents, marketing, everything is just difficult. Yeah, so it's just a journey for us to kind of like work on it. But maybe you can add something better.
Actually, like the question just now kind of reminded me of like this kind of answer, like a core challenge, a core aim, I would say, is as we scale and as like the market changes, as the kind of customer that we try to cater to changes, it is always a challenge to retain that core principle. And as we continue to expand, how can we find ways to still remain how we started out in the first place? And that's why we always emphasize on the three tenets that we have, and use that as like our guiding some guiding guiding rails, our lighthouse. Yeah.
Do you mind just sharing your three tenets one more time? Just yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So for us, we look for economic resilience, environmental and cultural stewardship, and lastly, equitable development. Yeah. So these three. We don't have an acronym, but yeah.
I have a follow-up question to that. So, when the number of tourists you can bring into the villages increase, right, there's bound to be impact, good and bad. So, how do you all measure the impact and make sure that you don't exceed the carrying capacity of the destination?
So the question was on impact measurement. How do we ensure that we don't exceed the carrying capacity, and what do we use to kind of measure? Yeah, so a few things depending on like which are the tenants. So one, for economic resiliency, of course, we look at whether like how much of them have given up their primary livelihood to do tourism specifically. And then for conservation, we look at I think a general satisfaction, and also how much young people are actually staying back in the village. So one of the very big problems for communities in rural communities is that leakage of young energy or young people. Yeah, so we try to, so one aspect of conservation is really to retain them through like offering tourism opportunities. And the last, in terms of inclusivity, it would be to check like if they have done what they promised. So whether it's a donation of a percentage of revenue to like the poorer households, or whether it's like employing more people as capacity grows. Yeah, so we look out for these factors, and of course like for now, because we're still really small, so what we do is like after every trip, we try to speak to them and ask them like how they felt and get a general sensing of whether the experience was good for them. Yeah.
By then you're referring to the local partners.
The local partners and the local communities. Yeah.
Can I ask a question? So you mentioned that your demographics are mostly students, right? So which came first? Is it by default because you want to go after that demographic and therefore you have experiences in the price point that matches what they want? Or is it because your experiences are at the price point that is attractive to uni students? Because if I'm hearing correctly, then you're saying that the majority of your experiences, to make it authentic or to make it in a low-key sense, that it is not, it doesn't fall into the luxury travel category. But I think actually there is a lot of luxury travel that would satisfy your free tenants as well. So yeah, so you're catering to obviously uni students. So you're offering the experiences at a price point that is attractive to them, and you're not at this point you don't offer anything that's catering to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like for sure, Bhutan travel is like luxury travel that probably satisfies the tenants. Yeah, so I think it was quite intentional in curating it for the younger audience. One is because more and more of them are becoming more conscious of sustainability and the impacts of their travel. And the other is that the other branding that we have is these off the beaten path adventures to kind of open the doors to people who are not into sustainability but just into travel and try to convert them with our experiences. Yeah, so it was quite intentional to target like that demographics and therefore the price point and the kind of offerings, at least for now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is, yeah, maybe as you are starting up, it would be, I guess, wise to start off at a certain bracket as well, because it does help to cater to a larger pool of audience. And also, I guess you guys are of the same age group as your target audience, so it makes it, I guess, a little bit more relevant in that sense. But yes, definitely, I do feel that there are a lot of other travel opportunities out there that fulfill these tenets that are also that you might want to consider in future, yeah, to put on your platform. Yeah. Okay. Are there any more other questions from the floor? If not, yes.
Is there a space for regenerative travel?
Is there a space? Sorry. Is there a space for ecotourism in regenerative travel?
I think it depends on what kind of ecotourism projects you're looking at specifically, because like it kind of ranges with every different person running it. Like sometimes putting up solar panel can become like an ecotourism project. Yeah, so it really depends what it is and like the extent of benefits and inclusivity it has for the rest of the community. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
So I guess in terms of ecotourism and regenerative, what I tried to look at is, does regenerative travel really it has to encourage the growth of a certain place, right? In terms of like either ecologically, if not community based. Am I right to say that in both ways? Okay, yeah. Does do you, actually, since you guys, I know Carmen and Tim, you guys have done quite a bit of different types of travel, and they try to travel quite consciously as well. Do you guys have like a travel destination that you've been to that you can kind of share about? Like you have, yeah, had gone to before that kind of fulfills these tenets as well.
Actually, so I would recommend because it's very similar to what you guys are working on. There is an NGO based in Cambodia, and they actually work with the local village, but this is for conservation tourism. And the NGO is called Wildlife Alliance. And they actually have very interesting, they actually support the local village to do mountain biking, trekking, such experiences. So I mean, and they do homestays. So we did travel with them. I went when they were setting this up. So we were there as for like I guess a field trip because I support the NGO.
Right. Yeah.
But otherwise, I mean, I think anywhere in any destination in Africa.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right. Okay, good. I guess there are a lot of opportunities to kind of explore regenerative travel, and it doesn't have to be something planned, but you can kind of make sure that you are looking into that as well. Maybe as a parting or ending note, would you have a piece of advice for people looking to travel? Is there something that they should look out for, or things that they should look out for? Yeah.
So usually we say I only get to ask about advice when it comes to people who are not already into, I guess, in the echo chamber, using the words previously. Yeah. So we usually tell people. I'm hoping that this video reaches not just the climate conscious, but just anybody in general. Just be mindful and conscious of the kind of footprint that you're leaving, and maybe we can be a little bit more intentional about why we travel and why we choose certain destinations, certain activities, and how does going to these places satisfy our own principles or values in a way. So yeah, that's what I will say.
I don't really have much to add in terms of advice, but maybe I can part with like my hope for tourism. So yeah, being like I really love traveling a lot, and I guess I really hope that we can reach a day whereby tourism, instead of being that force for destruction, really becomes that default like way to impact, to create positive impact on local communities. Yeah.
And yeah, we wish that your hope comes true, because that will be hope for the world. So thank you everyone for attending today's Wild Conversations, and thank you so much to our speakers. Maybe we can give them a round of applause. Yeah, thank you so much for attending and being such a great audience. So before I close, I think we have some administrative things to take care of. So we have a guest book that we hope everyone can sign. I think we've left out here. So before you head out, make sure you sign our guest book. It is actually drawn by Kelly, and she has it's of our native. Go for it. Yeah, I think because it's either you're too close to me or too close to this thing. I can't decide.
Okay, so because every time I stand there, I have to repeat myself like 1,000 times. So I might as well say this to everybody now. It's actually a native wildlife artwork, which is of 4 different native wildlife that we have in Singapore. And then you just sign within the animal, not outside, within the animal. And after that, we are hoping that this series will become an exhibition of artworks to remember all the people who we've met through our events. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, please remember to come and sign.
Yes, and okay, so next up is our next conversation. Our next speakers are actually, the 2 of them as well. So one of them is I think some of you know him, he is Ray Xiang. So Ray Xiang is the co-founder of Soda Lemon. They have found ways to recycle glass bottles, glasses, anything, any type of glass that you have seen in Singapore. They're trying to recycle it and make it into sustainable building material. So they're working towards that. And the other speaker is actually the executive lead of GUI, Ground Up Initiative. If you guys don't know what GUI is, it is a 21st century kampong, and they are community driven and they encourage sustainable living. Their new campus is actually, or their existing campus is completely, I would say, a large part of it is constructed out of construction waste. So it's very interesting. If you haven't been there, please pay them a visit. They have to move this year to a neighboring plot, but that's what they're trying to, they're hoping to achieve as well. So yeah, so come join us end of next month to find out more. Yeah, so I think I don't have any, oh yes, and do follow our updates on Instagram, of course. Yes, so lastly, yeah, stay around, mingle, grab a drink, talk to us, make some new friends, and yeah, stay wacky, wild, and curious in the meantime. So thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.